Welcome back to our channel. Today we dive straight into an incredible sci-fi thriller titled He Said One Word, and the alien girl screamed human before bolting away. Imagine a world where humans are myths, terrifying bedtime stories meant to scare alien children. But what happens when one of those mythical humans actually arrives, triggering a planetary manhunt? The story's climax is heart-pounding, a desperate mission to broadcast the truth while fighting off an army of misled guards. Stay tuned to find out whether the alien girl and her human ally manage to break centuries of lies, or if they'll be silenced forever. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories like this, and leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts. Where are you listening from today? Blood thundered in Sana's ears the moment she heard that single impossible word, human. At first, she thought the speaker had to be joking or simply insane. Everyone on Terrassa Prime knew humans didn't exist. They were bedtime monsters from ancient tales, cautionary figures used to frighten children into behaving. Yet there it was, clear as day, ringing out across the bustling bazaar. The voice that said it was deep, rough, and most terrifyingly real. She caught a glimpse of the speaker's face, and her entire world shattered. Pale peach skin, short dark hair, broad shoulders, and eyes that looked right into her with unsettling clarity. "Sana, are you even listening?" barked a portly merchant, jostling her elbow. His wares clanked together in a plastic bin that reeked of rotting fruit. "You're holding up the foot traffic, girl. Move along if you're not buying." But Sana was rooted to the spot. Heart hammering, she watched the tall stranger approach as the crowd parted in uneasy waves around him. He seemed lost, maybe even politely concerned. Definitely not the roaring, blood-soaked fiend every cautionary myth had warned her about. Still, the image of monstrous humans, disembodied legends who supposedly conquered half the galaxy and feasted on living prey, flashed in her mind. He stood no more than 10 paces away now, scanning passers-by for help with some handheld device. He opened his mouth, as if to ask a question, and Sana lost the last shred of composure she had. Her mind short-circuited between what she saw, just a tall, seemingly unarmed man, and what she'd been taught since infancy. Humans equaled unstoppable killers. Instinct trumped reason. She let loose a scream that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, an involuntary primal cry that turned every head in the market. "Human!" she shrieked, stumbling back in horror. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, shouts, stalls overturned. Security alarms blared as mothers yanked their children away and vendors scrambled to shutter their booths. The man took a step forward, trying to speak, but Sana fled, adrenaline coursing through her veins like liquid fire. She ran and ran, not caring where she went, only knowing that the nightmare had materialized, and it was real. She finally stopped in a narrow alley, panting hard. The city's hum still buzzed beyond the walls, and her scream continued to echo in her ears. Her skin, a velvety shade of lavender typical of Tirasan natives, glistened with sweat. Could she have imagined it? Had the old fables warped her perception? But no, she had seen him. There was no denying the unfamiliar color of his flesh. The hairline parted in an odd fashion, the straightforward gaze directed at her in the crowd. As the sharp tang of panic receded, Sana's rational mind began poking holes in her terror. If humans were as bloodthirsty as the legends claimed, why had he stood there so calmly, apparently wanting only directions or assistance? He hadn't bared teeth or whipped out a weapon. Instead, he'd looked more puzzled than anything. She recalled the cautionary nursery rhymes. "Beware the human's gaze. It alone can drive you mad." Nonsense. She certainly felt unsettled, but hardly insane. A shrill klaxon sounded in the distance, indicating the mobilization of Terrassa Prime security forces. The city guard was searching for someone, him. The unwelcome pang of guilt clutched at her gut. Had her scream condemned this being outright, without cause? Never mind that every bone in her body still quivered with residual fear. Sana pressed her back against the alley's brickwork, searching her memory. She worked in the Grand Archives, though worked was a generous term. She was an underling, a junior-level scribe assisting archivist Creon in organizing historical documents about the age of nightfall, when humans were said to have ravaged entire star clusters. In truth, she'd always found those records suspiciously short on details. They were mostly cautionary tales, repeated and embellished through centuries. But the archives also kept restricted text, older tablets and manuscripts no outsider was allowed to see. Perhaps if she read them, her stomach churned with indecision. She had triggered a planetary manhunt the second her terrified yelp echoed across the marketplace. If she did nothing, this human, if that's truly what he was, would be hunted down and probably executed. But what if the legends were true? What if, by helping him, she unleashed a new wave of horrors upon Terrassa Prime? A sudden noise startled her, a shout, followed by the rhythmic stomp of boots. Too close. The city guard had expanded their sweep. Hunkering down, Sana crept to the alley entrance and peered around the corner. A squad of 4 uniformed officers marched past, weapons at the ready, their expressions deadly serious. She recognized one of them, Officer Helry, known for her fierce loyalty to the council. Helry's face was grim, her posture alert. "We have orders to eliminate the threat on sight," Helry announced to her squad mates. "Don't bother with stunners. We're not taking chances on the old terror." Sana's heart clenched. Eliminate on sight. She swallowed against the dryness in her throat, a swirl of conflicting emotions roiling inside. If humans were indeed unstoppable brutes, maybe the council was justified. Yet a small voice in her mind insisted, what if it's all a lie? Something in that man's face just didn't align with the monster she was taught to fear. She waited until the guards turned a corner before she slipped out of hiding. The spaceport was the most logical place for a stranded traveler, so that's where he would likely head, especially if he was in dire need of repairs or official clearance. If she could find him first, perhaps she could talk to him, safely from a distance. Figure out if he truly was as dangerous as legend decreed. Sticking to the less traveled back alleys, Sana made her way toward the city's central quadrant. Her mind spun with questions she had never thought she'd have to answer. Humans, real or myth? Could they truly lay waste to entire civilizations in the blink of an eye? Or were they as mortal and varied as her own people? She couldn't help remembering the gentle confusion in his eyes. It reminded her of lost travelers from distant star systems who came to the Grand Archives seeking answers. That look didn't belong to someone on a mission of conquest. Before we move on, I'd love to know what you think so far. Comment 1 if you're intrigued by this unexpected twist, or 2 if you think the stories about humans might still be true. And also, where are you reading this from? Let me know. I'm curious about our community's reach. Her labyrinthine journey through side streets was cut short by a harsh yank on her sleeve. In a flash, she found herself pinned against a corrugated metal wall. A hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. Adrenaline spiked and her body tensed, expecting the worst. "Please, don't shout this time," came the urgent whisper. She froze. That voice was unfamiliar, deep, tinged with a strange accent. It's him. A quick glance confirmed her suspicion. The pale skin, the height, the intense gaze. He quickly removed his hand once he judged she wouldn't cry out. Sana's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear. She expected to see vicious cruelty in his expression, but instead she saw fear and relief. "I'm Castor," he said quietly, dropping his arm to his side. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just needed directions. Next thing I know, your entire city is trying to kill me." For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she forced out words that felt strange on her tongue. Are you human? His expression flickered. Yes, he answered, swallowing hard. I thought your people knew about us. I didn't realize stepping into that marketplace was basically a death sentence. Sana exhaled shakily, her entire worldview teetering on the edge of collapse. We were taught that humans are unstoppable monsters, Castor grimaced, running a hand through his short hair. Well, I guess I don't blame you. Some old rumors about us have circulated, but they're grossly exaggerated. My ship malfunctioned, dropped out of FTL near your planet, and I'm stranded here. I just wanted to find local authorities and request repair help. She studied his face in the dim alley light. Sweat glistened on his brow, and lines of tension marred his features. If he was a savage creature intent on planetary destruction, he was putting on a pretty convincing show of vulnerability. Meanwhile, the guards' voices grew louder down the street. All right, she breathed, making the snap decision that changed everything. I'll take you somewhere safe, but if you betray me, so help me, I won't, he promised, genuine desperation glowing in his eyes. Together, they slipped through a warren of service corridors beneath the city. The walls were tinged with greenish mold, and the floor was slick with condensation. Every so often, they'd pass a flickering maintenance lamp or a stack of crates labeled for municipal disposal. Sana's hands shook, but she led the way regardless, trusting her knowledge of these neglected tunnels. They came upon a T-junction where two city guards meticulously searched an array of storage lockers. Sana and Castor flattened themselves against a damp wall, hearts in their throats. Thankfully, the guards moved on after a few tense moments. Once the path was clear, Sana guided Castor deeper until they emerged behind a row of vacant industrial buildings on the outskirts of the city. The acrid tang of machinery bit the air. Overhead, the sun was dipping below the skyline, painting the metal structures in a soft orange glow. This is where? Castor asked quietly. A neglected shipping zone. Few people come here after dark. She let him catch his breath while scanning for any sign of guards. I know a place we can hide temporarily. He nodded, pressing a hand to his side as if stifling a stitch of pain. Whatever you recommend, I owe you my life already. Sana's mind still roiled with conflict. Was she truly helping a benign traveler or inadvertently aiding a cunning predator? She recalled the stories of how humans were physically stronger, faster, and capable of unbelievable feats. What if he turned on her once he was safe? Yet so far, nothing about him screamed malevolent invader. He appeared exhausted, worn down by desperation and close calls. If he wanted to harm her, he'd had ample opportunity. I, she started, but her sentence died when their gazes met. She saw gratitude there, along with an almost childlike wonder. A sense of responsibility tugged at her heart. Whatever he was, human or demon, he was alone in a hostile city, and she had practically summoned that hostility with her terrified scream. Let's go, she said, her voice gentler than before. There's a derelict safe house near the old textile factory. We can rest there until the city calms. They slipped inside the abandoned structure, layers of dust swirling in their wake. Once a bustling clothing mill, it now sat silent, full of disused looms and stale air. A row of overhead lights flickered, half dead, casting dancing shadows on the cracked concrete floor. Sana carefully led them to an office corner that still had an intact lock and windows boarded up from the outside. This is it, she said, pushing open the creaking door. We can't stay long, but it'll do for now. Castor slumped against a wall, sliding down until he was seated on the floor. Thank you, he murmured, for believing me, at least enough to let me breathe. Sana rummaged through her small pack, produced a canister of purified water, and handed it to him. He gulped gratefully, then let out a slow exhale. So, Do you really believe all those stories about us? About humans being unstoppable killers? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I did, or at least I never had reason to doubt them. The ancient archives are full of references to your kind, legends that say humans once ravaged entire sectors. Full of references or full of warnings? He countered, raising an eyebrow. Heat rose in Sana's cheeks. Warnings, she admitted. They never gave any specific battles or proof, just stories and cautionary decrees. We treat them like historical fact, but now I'm not so sure. Castor leaned his head back against the wall. For the record, we humans aren't the warmongering devils your legends suggest. We only achieved widespread interstellar travel a couple of centuries ago. We're explorers mostly. Yes, we've had conflicts, but who hasn't? His sincerity chipped away at her convictions. On top of that, guilt gnawed at her insides. The city guard was out there on a lethal manhunt because she'd panicked. If these old tales were indeed wrong, or at least exaggerated, then she'd instigated a grave injustice. Tomorrow, Sana said, voice trembling slightly, I'm going back to the Grand Archives. I need to see the restricted text that even I haven't been allowed to read. Maybe the real truth is in there. Quick check-in here, folks. Comment Sunrise if you think Sana can trust Castor, or Twilight if you're still not convinced. And I'm curious, where in the world, or galaxy, are you tuning in from? Night fell, blanketing the factory in a hush that felt both uneasy and oddly comforting. Castor dozed fitfully, still too tense to fully relax. Sana leaned against an ancient metal desk, arms crossed, eyes scanning the darkness. She thought about her mentor, Archivist Creon, a brilliant but guarded scholar who oversaw the Grand Archives. He often hinted that the official narrative about the Age of Nightfall might be incomplete. If anybody had ventured close to the real story of the so-called human menace, it would be Creon. A distant rumble shook the building's rafters. Outside, the city's lights flickered in and out, as if the energy grid were under strain. Sana's stomach twisted. Terrassa Prime's authorities must be stepping up their efforts to find the intruder. She and Castor wouldn't have long before the net closed around them. At some point, she drifted into a light sleep, only to awaken to a faint scraping sound. Castor was upright, weapon in hand, a compact pistol from his emergency kit. It looked advanced, nothing like the standard energy weapons used by Tirasan guards. She half expected him to reveal monstrous strength or telepathic powers, some outlandish trait she'd read in those dusty tomes. But he seemed simply alert. Sorry, he whispered, noticing her startle. Heard something outside. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Two beams of flashlight stabbed through the gloom. Sana motioned for Castor to remain still. Muffled voices drifted through the hall. No sign of them here. Let's check the next row. They held their breath, tension like a coiled spring. Minutes felt like hours, but the footsteps receded, eventually disappearing. Castor's posture relaxed, though sweat beaded on his brow. Unable to stand the uncertainty any longer, Sana approached him. I need to know more, she said in a hushed tone. About humans, about why you're here. He shrugged helplessly. I'm a pilot, part of an exploration unit. My job was to collect samples, chart new sectors. Then my ship had this malfunction. By the time I realized I was near your planet, it was either crash or land. He paused, meeting her gaze with unwavering honesty. I didn't mean to start a war, Sana. Morning arrived all too quickly. They crept out of the factory under the first rays of sunlight, finding the street still under heavy guard presence. Sirens wailed in the distance, along with bursts of official announcements. Attention citizens of Terrassa Prime. A dangerous intruder remains at large. If you spot any unusual activity, report immediately. Castor's expression hardened, and Sana felt a surge of protectiveness she couldn't entirely explain. It was bizarre to feel empathy for a being she had believed to be a myth mere hours ago. Perhaps it was the simple fact that he seemed genuinely frightened and exhausted, no different from a refugee in a hostile land. Avoiding main thoroughfares, they inched closer to the towering domed structure that housed the Grand Archives. Built of polished obsidian-like stone, the building glowed in the sun's early light. Its slender spires reached skyward, a monument to centuries of recorded knowledge or propaganda, depending on whose perspective you took. They snuck in through a side entrance that archivists often use to carry in new acquisitions. Inside, the air was cool, nearly silent, except for the hum of climate control systems. Endless rows of towering shelves filled the space, an organized labyrinth of texts, tablets, and data cubes. Sana led Castor along the perimeter walkways, conscious of every security camera. She had no illusions about the risk. If discovered, they'd be deemed traitors to the council. But caution alone wouldn't stop her. She had to know the truth about these so-called human devils. They found archivist Creon in a secluded reading room, poring over ancient manuscripts. His silver eyebrows shot upward at the sight of Sana, creeping in with an obvious off-worlder. Then alarm painted his wrinkled features. Sana, by the mothers, do you know what you've done? She grabbed his arm, voice trembling. Creon, please, just listen. You once said the official accounts might be flawed. This man, he's human, and he's not here to kill us. Creon's gaze darted between them, curiosity battling with fear. Humans? Truly? Then the restricted scrolls. Maybe they were correct about them after all. Ever the scholar, Creon demanded proof. Castor obliged by speaking about his homeworld's star system, referencing scientific data about Sol-type suns and Earth's atmospheric composition. He produced a handheld device that mapped hyperspace routes based on real-time quantum echoes. His manner was calm, measured, anything but monstrous. Creon's hands shook as he recounted ancient passages from the restricted collection. Many described humans as cunning, physically superior, and technologically advanced beyond measure. But some older fragments implied a different reality, that humans had once been allied with Tirasans, collaborating in trade and cultural exchange. The disturbing question was, what changed? Why had the official story been rewritten into horror? The council cites the time of ravage as indisputable fact, Creon explained. They say humans consumed worlds and enslaved entire species, but none of the texts actually provide specific details, no mention of star dates, battles, or casualties. It's as if the entire narrative was inserted after the fact. Sana shuddered. But who would do that? And why? Before Creon could respond, a shrill klaxon shattered the hush of the archives. Through the tall windows, they could see the flicker of emergency lights. Guards had arrived, alerted to their infiltration, or perhaps merely scanning for Castor's presence. Creon scrambled to gather important data crystals, his face set with determined urgency. We have to leave. The council won't hesitate to arrest us all. In the corridor, boots thudded closer, accompanied by barked orders. Castor's lips thinned. He tried to ready his sidearm, but Sana's mind raced ahead to the labyrinthine corridors that led to the restricted vault. Maybe if they doubled back through the sub-basement, they could evade capture. Then the door burst open. 3 guards, weapons drawn. They froze for a second at the sight of the very human they'd been ordered to kill on sight. Stand down, one shouted, trembling with either fear or adrenaline. By order of the council, you're all under arrest. If you've stuck with the story so far, let me know. Comment Explorer if you want them to escape, or Guardian if you think they should try to negotiate right here. And hey, tell me, how did you first find this tale? Chaos erupted in the reading room. Creon hissed, no time for negotiations. They'll shoot first, question later. He slammed his fist against a hidden panel, revealing a tiny side corridor behind a sliding bookshelf. Go now! The guards advanced. One fired a stun charge that crackled inches from Castor's shoulder. He returned fire with a short burst from his own pistol, melting part of the floor near their feet and forcing them to leap aside. The smell of scorched laminate filled the air. Sana ducked into the narrow passage, guiding Castor by the sleeve. Creon followed, sealing the entrance behind them. In near total darkness, they shuffled along until the corridor opened into a seldom-used storage chamber. Shelves laden with dusty holographic tablets and archaic scrolls towered overhead. Well, that escalated quickly, Castor muttered, wincing from the shallow burn on his upper arm, a graze from the guard's shot. Your city's hospitality leaves something to be desired. They're brainwashed, Creon said, exhaling shakily, or at least misled. They believe they're defending Terrassa Prime from an existential threat. The real question is, who wants them to believe that? A swirl of old rumors and half-remembered references filled Sana's thoughts. There's a rumored infiltration, some external force that manipulates entire societies, but no one's ever produced evidence. She touched Castor's shoulder lightly. If humans never conquered us, then maybe that infiltration is behind the propaganda. And it worked, Creon noted grimly. People are terrified of humans now, terrified enough to follow an order to kill on sight. They needed answers, fast. Creon dug through the dusty shelves, retrieving a battered data wafer. We have records from some system called Galen's Crest. Over 1,000 years ago, they reported meeting humans who came as explorers and left peacefully. Yet our official timeline claims humans were monstrous in that same era. This wafer might hold more clues. A pounding on the sealed entrance ended the discussion. The guards had found the hidden door. There was no time to parse ancient data. They had to flee again. Creon led them through another maze of corridors until they reached a seldom-used freight elevator. The platform rattled as it descended deep beneath the Grand Archives, an area rumored to be honeycombed with tunnels connecting to the old city catacombs. As the elevator shuddered to a halt, emergency lighting flickered. The subterranean passage smelled of damp stone and age-old dust. The overhead pipes dripped condensation, forming shallow puddles on the uneven floor. This entire section predates the modern city by centuries, Creon explained, stepping off the platform. If we keep going, we might reach an exit on the far side of the main guard station. That's our best chance to slip away. Castor glanced around, scanning for threats with cautious eyes. Let's hope your guards aren't mapping every inch of these tunnels. Their path took them through a crypt-like chamber lined with engraved pillars. Statues of Terrassan ancestors gazed impassively from the darkness. Occasional relief sculptures depicted cosmic motifs, stars, swirling galaxies, and humanoid figures interacting with them. It felt eerie, yet also oddly beautiful. Sana couldn't help but notice one particularly striking mural. It showed a group of Terrassans standing beside a taller, different species that bore a resemblance to Castor's silhouette. The figures seemed friendly, depicted in unison, not in conflict. If that was a representation of ancient humans, then these underground vaults harbored more truth than any official story ever did. They paused near a collapsed corridor, deciding which path to take. Creon was breathing heavily, clearly not used to such strenuous exertion. Castor stepped up to offer support, his natural strength evident in the way he gently steadied the older man. "You okay?" Creon nodded. "I'm fine, just, ironically, I've spent decades trying to uncover the truth, but I never expected to run for my life to protect it." Sana's wrist comm beeped, a single coded message from a friend in the archives who had stayed behind. It read, "They're sealing city gates. The council declared martial law. Flee now." Her eyes darted up from the device. "They're closing off the city. We need to hurry." They emerged from a forgotten drainage outlet on the city's southern perimeter, the morning sun blazing overhead. Beyond the utility fences lay farmland dotted with modular homes and scattered livestock. It was a route few official patrols would bother monitoring. Creon squinted at the bright daylight. The only place we might be able to hide now is at the outskirts or beyond. But if we go too far, we'll lose any chance of unveiling the truth to the public. Castor tested the fence's integrity. I need to contact my ship. It's stashed at the eastern space field. If we can bypass the city's security perimeter, maybe I can get us off-world. Then we can send proof back to the Tirsan people from a safe distance. Sana bristled at the idea of abandoning her home. But realistically, what choice did she have? She'd helped a fugitive, defied the city guard, and might be branded a traitor already. And if the infiltration theory was correct, that danger only scratched the surface. I'll help you get there, she offered, but promise me you won't just vanish. We need a way to clear your name and mine. Castor nodded. I don't plan on running away forever. We want the truth out just as much as you do. As they slipped through the fence, memories of her childhood flashed in Sana's mind. She recalled the bedtime stories her grandmother told, weirdly inconsistent myths about monstrous humans with unstoppable appetite for conquest. Her grandmother never seemed to fully believe them, but society repeated them ad nauseum. Seeing those cryptic murals underground, noticing how incomplete the official records were, something bigger was at play. Before we press on with this escape, how are you feeling about the pacing? Comment brisk if you like the action so far, or steady if you prefer more world building and intrigue. Also, are you reading this on a phone, a tablet, or something else? I'm always curious about how our readers tune in. They had to navigate farmland roads, half expecting a patrol at every turn. Most locals stayed indoors, likely ordered to shelter in place. A few faces peered from behind curtains, fear etched into their expressions. Word had spread, a lethal human was on the loose. The double meaning wasn't lost on Kira, who returned his smile with one of her own. Whatever came next, they would face it together, a partnership that defied ancient manipulations and crossed the stars. Once past the farmland, they skirted a narrow stream bordered by tall reeds that whispered in the breeze. The city's shimmering skyline loomed behind them, full of tension and lockdown districts. Sana wondered how quickly rumors would spread about her involvement. Probably not long now before wanted bulletins included her face as well. Castor moved with surprising stealth, scanning the horizon for any sign of aerial drones. My ship is a small exploration vessel, not heavily armed. If your authorities have planetary defenses, we'll need to be quick about takeoff. Creon caught up with them, eyes laden with concern. Sana, you realize once we leave, it might be impossible to come back peacefully. The council will label us fugitives, or worse. She swallowed hard, remembering her beloved city, the archives she had dedicated her life to. But going back inside the walls would be suicidal and pointless if she didn't reveal the truth about the false histories. I can't stand by while they execute an innocent man. If that means exile, then so be it. They followed an unpaved road that led toward the eastern space field, typically a bustling commercial port. Now it seemed eerily still. The control tower was deserted, its lights dim. A handful of ships sat grounded on the tarmac, presumably stuck under martial law. This way, Castor hissed, leading them behind a cluster of massive cargo crates. He paused, glancing at his handheld scanner. There's a beacon from my ship about 300 meters that way. It's locked down, but I can override the security. Sana's chest constricted. She couldn't believe the path her life had taken in the span of a single day. She'd gone from unsuspecting archivist to an accomplice in what looked like sabotage or treason. And yet, deep in her heart, she felt certain she was doing the right thing. Breaking the hush, Creon asked, "Once we're airborne, do you plan to meet with other humans?" Castor nodded. Yes, there's an outpost in a neighboring system. If we can reach them, maybe we can gather evidence to prove that the old stories are lies. We can broadcast that truth back to Terrassa Prime. They dashed across the wide-open expanse of the space field, hearts pounding with the fear of being spotted. Creon, despite his age, managed a brisk pace, propelled by sheer adrenaline. Up ahead, they glimpsed a sleek midnight blue vessel with a hull that seemed to absorb sunlight rather than reflect it. "Is that yours?" Sana asked, eyebrows climbing in surprise. Castor managed a quick grin. "Human stealth technology. We learned not every planet welcomes unknown visitors." A loudspeaker crackled to life somewhere in the docking zone. "Attention, this is a restricted area. Intruders must surrender immediately." They all froze. Then, from behind a nearby storage building, a squad of uniformed guards emerged, led by Officer Helry, the same relentless woman who had patrolled the city earlier. She looked furious, brandishing a sidearm. "Halt! You're harboring the monster!" Castor's hand inched toward his own weapon, but Creon raised his arms, stepping forward. "Officer Helry, please, you don't understand. He's not a monster. We've been lied to." Helry's eyes flitted from Creon to Sana to Castor, her grip on the gun tightening. "Archivist, you're risking your life for an off-world abomination?" Sana felt her voice quake. "He's just a person, Helry. The scrolls are incomplete, fabricated, or twisted. Let us go. We have proof, but we need time to show everyone." For a second, Helry's expression wavered, as though she might lower the weapon. But the shadow of fear and indoctrination was too deeply rooted. "No, my orders are clear. Step aside or be treated as conspirators." In that split second, Sana saw Helry's finger move on the trigger. She lunged, tackling Creon out of harm's way. Castor fired a warning shot, scorching the pavement near Helry's feet. That disruption was enough to cause the squad to scatter, but Helry recovered instantly, shouting for them to return fire. "Quick heads up, everyone. Comment heroic if you think they can escape unscathed, or realistic if you sense tragedy ahead. Also, do you typically read sci-fi or other genres too? Let me know." Energy blasts whipped across the tarmac, leaving sizzling scorch marks. Castor moved with startling agility, grabbing Sana's hand and sprinting for his ship. Creon scrambled after them, crouching low to avoid the hail of fire. Helry's squad regrouped, their shots more coordinated. One bolt glanced off the hull of Castor's ship, leaving a charred streak. "Get inside," Castor barked, pressing his palm to the vessel's biometric scanner. The ramp lowered with a pneumatic hiss. Sana and Creon dove in. Castor followed, slamming the controls to retract the entry ramp. Helry and her guards rushed forward, but the ramp sealed just in time. Through a small viewport, Sana glimpsed Helry's furious expression. The space field around them filled with the piercing wail of an emergency siren. Castor sprinted to the cockpit, tossing a set of harnesses to Sana and Creon. "Strap in tight. If they've got anti-air artillery, we're about to find out." The ship's engines roared to life, the cabin vibrating with pent-up power. A red alert flashed on the console. The local air defense grid had locked onto them. The council wasn't going to let a human threat simply fly away. With a trembling breath, Sana strapped herself in, glancing at Creon, who did the same. She caught the flicker of fear in his eyes, but also a resolve, like the archivist had finally found the truth he'd spent a lifetime seeking. Castor's hands flew over the controls, initiating thrusters and diverting extra power to the shields. "I'm not here to kill anyone," he muttered through clenched teeth, "but I will not be shot down." In a surge of engine power, the vessel lifted off. For a moment, it hovered above the tarmac. Then Helry's team unleashed a volley of anti-air projectiles. The ship's shields flared in a burst of crackling energy. "Hang on," Castor shouted, ramming the throttle forward. The craft jerked, soared higher, narrowly missing another barrage. The city shrank below them, and the boundary of Terrassa Prime's atmosphere drew closer by the second. Two pursuit ships launched from a nearby hangar, trailing smoke as they ascended. Their design was angular, bristling with weapons, clearly intended for planetary defense. They quickly gained altitude, fixating on Castor's vessel. Sana's heart hammered in her chest. She'd never been off-world, never even flown in anything more advanced than a local glider. A swirl of terror and thrill curdled in her stomach. "They're closing in," she warned, her voice trembling. "I see them," Castor replied, calm but intense. He flipped a sequence of switches. Activating stealth plating might not fully fool them this close, but it should disrupt their target lock. A subtle ripple ran along the hull, and the external view shimmered. The immediate result was a confused volley of missiles that whizzed by wide, searching for a radar signature that was no longer there. Still, the pursuit ships didn't give up. They formed a flanking maneuver, trying to herd Castor's craft. Creon gripped the armrest, knuckles white. "We're heading for space, right? Their short-range ships can't follow if we achieve orbit." Castor nodded, weaving through more missile fire. "That's the plan, but we'll have only a small window." A sudden jolt rocked the cabin. Sana felt her stomach lurch as one of the pursuing ships managed to land a glancing shot on their rear stabilizer. Alarms rang out. Castor spat a curse. "Stabilizer's compromised. I can still handle it, but we've got to break atmosphere now." Fighting the turbulence, he angled the ship toward the upper cloud layers. In seconds, they burst through the cloud bank into bright, blinding sunlight. The black sky above grew steadily darker as they neared the boundary of open space. The sensor array beeped, indicating the pursuit ships had to pull back or risk damaging their own engines. Sana pressed her face to the viewport. The curvature of Terrassa Prime glowed below, a planet she never thought she'd see from above. The guardians of that planet still believed the worst about humans, and a pang of sorrow struck her chest. So many lives manipulated by misinformation. The moment they cleared the atmosphere, Castor engaged the faster-than-light engines. A surge of energy pulsed through the craft. Then the stars outside elongated into brilliant streaks. Terrassa Prime vanished behind them. They remained silent for several minutes, letting the weight of what they'd done settle in. They had effectively defied an entire planetary government. Sahana's mind buzzed with images. Helry's anger, the anti-air shots, the swirl of dust in the grand archives. More than anything, she felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for leaving behind innocent citizens who continued to live under a fabricated terror. At length, Castor engaged the autopilot, turning to face them. "We'll need to find a place to regroup, collect evidence. I'm heading for a human outpost called Farbridge Station. It's small, but well defended." Creon nodded, cradling the data wafer he'd retrieved. "We also have the wafer and the knowledge we gleaned from the restricted texts. If we can compile it properly and broadcast it back to Terrassa, we might shift the narrative." Sana realized her whole body was shaking with fatigue. What if the Council tracks us down or tries to intercept our messages? Castor shook his head. "They might try, but once we link to the open galactic comnet, it'll be harder for them to contain, especially if we share the data publicly, not just with Tirasans." A new thought struck Sana. But wait, why spread false narratives about humans at all? Who benefits from that? Creon stroked his chin. "That's the real question. If these stories are ancient, it suggests there's some external force that, over centuries, has shaped public perception. Perhaps a power that sees humans as a threat to its own agendas." The idea chilled her. An unseen manipulator that had orchestrated hatred for generations. She recalled rumors of synthetic infiltrators or intangible puppet masters. But it had always seemed too conspiratorial. Now it seemed terrifyingly plausible. If you're still with us, let me know. Comment truth if you believe there's a grand conspiracy, or doubt if you think it's just fear run amok. And do me a favor, tell me if you trust Castor at this point. I'm curious. Farbridge Station was a speck against the void, hidden in the outer reaches of a neighboring star system. Constructed from repurposed asteroid mining rigs, it lacked the polish of a modern installation but boasted formidable weapon platforms. As Castor's ship approached, automated turrets pivoted to track them, shining bright targeting lasers across the hull. A clipped voice crackled over comms. Unidentified vessel, you are entering private space. State your business or be fired upon. Castor input a sequence of codes. This is Castor Allendale, Exploration Corps. Sending clearance now. There was a pause, then an abrupt shift in tone. Clearance confirmed. Docket Bay 7 and Castor. Commander Aveline wants to see you immediately. The docking procedure was tense but successful. Sana peered out the viewport, noting humans of various shapes, sizes, and complexions moving about the hangar deck. They didn't look like slavering beasts. In fact, the general vibe resembled any busy trade port. Shouts, machinery whirring, cargo being unloaded. They powered down the ship, and the ramp lowered. Almost at once, a tall woman with cropped dark hair marched toward them, flanked by two security officers. Her uniform bore the insignia of a station commander, and the stern lines on her face suggested no-nonsense authority. Aveline? Castor greeted, half saluting. Long story. The woman eyed Sana and Creon carefully. I see. So the rumors were true. You found a planet that believes humans are monstrous. She motioned for them to follow her through the airlock doors. We'll talk in the briefing room, all of you. Within minutes, they sat around a metal conference table in a cramped chamber. Aveline's eyes narrowed as Castor explained the situation. Crash landing on Terrassa, the infiltration by false dogma, and the fiasco that forced them to flee. Creon chimed in, describing the twisted records in the archives. So it's happening again, Aveline said grimly once they finished. We've seen this pattern in half a dozen star systems, but the infiltration and misinformation runs deeper on Terrassa than most. Sana leaned forward, her mind racing. Wait, you've seen this before? That means it's not just our planet? Aveline exchanged a look with Castor. No, we've encountered multiple worlds where, for centuries, the population was fed horror stories about humans. They're never consistent about dates or details, always vague but powerful enough to foster fear. We suspect an outside force, likely an advanced AI or collective, that sees human expansion as a threat. It stokes paranoia so that local populations attack us on sight or never cooperate with us at all. Creon exhaled, dread and validation mingling in his features. This is exactly what we feared. Our official records show no direct contact with humans, yet the population is convinced we faced your armadas millennia ago. Aveline folded her arms. Our intelligence indicates that these puppet masters, call them the Varant, are an ancient network of synthetic intelligences. They infiltrate societies, rewrite cultural narratives, and sow hostility between species. We don't know their endgame. Possibly they want to isolate any potential rivals. Possibly they thrive on conflict. A hush fell over the room as that realization set in. Sana felt sick imagining an invisible hand guiding her people's fear for generations. So what do we do? She asked, forcing the tremble from her voice. We can't just leave Terrassa Prime to be manipulated further. That's why we've devoted resources to the HFY initiative, Humanity for You, where we attempt to disprove these anti-human myths through direct outreach, Aveline replied. But infiltration on your planet appears to be advanced. If the Council is fully compromised, they'll do whatever it takes to maintain the false narrative. We have fragments of truth on a data wafer, Creon interjected. Old tablets, conflicting accounts, enough to cast doubt on the official story. But it won't be enough without public platforms. We need to show everyone, in real time, that humans aren't the devils they've been taught to fear. Aveline's gaze locked onto Sana. You understand the risk if you go back with this knowledge? Sana squared her shoulders. I do, but I can't abandon my home to the Varant's lies. The briefing concluded with a plan. They would gather more concrete evidence of Varant infiltration, communications logs, infiltration patterns, maybe even physical proof of synthetic agents, and then slip it into Terrasa's networks in a way the Council couldn't suppress. Meanwhile, Aveline would dispatch a small task force to coordinate with Creon and Sana, ensuring protection if the Council decided to eliminate them rather than allow the truth to spread. The station bustled with activity, the mood now electric with purpose. Technicians prepped a small stealth corvette for infiltration missions, fueling it under hush-hush conditions. Others loaded data drives with meticulously compiled intelligence on the Varan. Ant. Sana and Castor found themselves momentarily alone in a side corridor, the hum of the station's life support system thrumming in the background. For a second, neither spoke, weighed down by the enormity of what they faced. You realize, Castor began softly, that going back to Terrassa means putting your life on the line. I wouldn't blame you if you stayed here. She studied his eyes, those human eyes that had once terrified her. Now they reflected concern and a flicker of warmth. I can't abandon my people to illusions. Besides, she added with a half smile, you need me to navigate those archives and local networks if we want to stand a chance. He nodded, eyes flicking down for a moment before he stepped closer. The hallway lighting illuminated the subtle differences in their skin, her lavender hue and his pale complexion. Thank you, he said, voice earnest. When you screamed back there in the market, I was sure I was doomed. Instead, you saved my life. Now we're saving your entire planet, hopefully. Her breath caught. A swirl of warmth moved through her, the moment charged with intimacy. If someone had told her a day ago she'd be confiding in a human, practically forming an alliance, she'd have laughed them out of the room. Yet now, every fiber of her being wanted to see him succeed, to protect him as he had her. Let's pause here for a quick pulse check. Comment united if you feel the bond between Sana and Castor growing, or wary if you still sense trouble ahead. Also, let me know your favorite scene so far. The infiltration corvette, christened Dawn Seeker, was a sleek craft designed for stealth runs. It had advanced cloaking fields, jamming devices, and hull plating that could shift electromagnetic signatures. A few hours after their meeting, it was ready to depart, loaded with the precious data that Creon and Sana would use to reveal the truth to their people. Aboard the Dawnseeker were just 6 souls: Sana, Castor, Creon, and 3 human operatives from Aveline's unit, tech specialist Morin, navigator Lance, and security officer Hale. Each brought specialized skills to handle infiltration, data manipulation, and if necessary, close quarters combat. Once within the pilot's seat, Castor initiated the flight sequence, glancing over his shoulder at the group strapped into crash webbing. We've charted a course that'll drop us out of FTL at the edge of Terrassa's system. Then we'll drift in on minimal power to avoid early detection. Sana busied herself double-checking the crate of data drives loaded with Varant infiltration evidence. Her heart fluttered with anxious energy. She couldn't stop picturing Helry's gun pointed at them on that tarmac, the Council's unwavering hostility, the city guards marching with lethal intent. Would they even get a chance to broadcast the truth? Or would the Council slam shut every channel, block every attempt? Nevertheless, they had to try. The hiss of pressurized air signaled the Corvette's departure from Farbridge Station. Stars filled the viewport, and soon they were in FTL, streaks of cosmic light whisking them across the void. Creon sat beside her, carefully handling the battered data wafer. I've spent my whole career seeking hidden truths, but never did I imagine it would come to this, he murmured. It's like living inside a script we never wrote. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Your research is what helped me doubt the official tales. It brought us to Castor and ultimately to the truth. The old archivist gave a faint smile. I never thought I'd be working with a human, that's for sure. Hours later, they dropped out of FTL at the system's periphery. True to plan, Castor cut main engines and shifted to low-emission thrusters. The Corvette glided forward silently, just another speck among cosmic dust, hopefully invisible to the sensors on Tirasa Prime. Navigator Lance monitored the scopes. Minimal chatter from the planet. Their orbital security net is partially active, but it's not as robust as expected. Possibly they think you're still gone for good. Security Officer Hale checked his weapons. Let's hope it stays that way. If they scramble a defense squadron, we'll be hard-pressed in a firefight. Sana's jaw clenched. She didn't relish the thought of more violence, especially not against her own people. But the infiltration had run so deep that the Council and much of the Guard believed they were doing a righteous duty. If the Varant's manipulations were as widespread as Aveline suspected, there might be hidden agents ready to sabotage any attempt at truth. Eventually, they reached low orbit, hugging the planet's twilight side. The plan was to touch down in a remote desert region, far from any major city, then use ground vehicles to slip back into the capital. Creon believed they could infiltrate the public broadcast station or even the city's central data core. Once they fed the files into the planet-wide network, it would become impossible for the Council to silence the revelation of the Varant's meddling. Castor brought the Dawn Seeker into a cautious descent through the atmosphere. No alarms, no immediate pursuit. Sana almost dared to hope they'd slip by unnoticed. Then a tremor shook the Corvette. Alarms whined, and Lance's console lit up. Incoming energy wave, some kind of scan. They've found us. Castor cursed under his breath, wrestling with the controls. Hang on, we're going in fast. The sleek Corvette dove sharply, flames licking the viewports as friction built up. Sana's stomach lurched, sweat beaded on her forehead. Another wave slammed them, causing the ship's hull to rattle ominously. Their stealth fields fizzled under the strain. Miraculously, Castor managed to land the Corvette in a sand-swept canyon. Engines hissed, and the entire craft shuddered as if exhausted from a desperate sprint. Outside, the swirling desert wind pelted the hull with gritty blasts, providing a natural cover that might just keep them hidden from overhead patrols. Everyone unbuckled and stood on shaky legs. Morin, the tech specialist, immediately began scanning the area. No immediate hostiles, but we've got to move. They'll send flyers or satellites eventually. They lowered the loading ramp, stepping out into a howling gale. Fine grains of sand stung Sana's cheeks, but she took it in stride. This was the Lincora Desert, a region she only knew from textbooks. If not for the swirling dust, they would have glimpsed majestic rock formations, said to be older than civilization itself. They unloaded two rugged all-terrain vehicles from the Corvette's cargo bay. Morin took one with Hale, while the second went to Sana, Castor, and Creon. With the protective canopies sealed, they set off, navigating the jagged canyon floor. Their plan: drive through the desert until they reached the outskirts of the capital, then continue on foot to avoid detection. It felt surreal, this infiltration mission on her own homeworld. Once again, she was on the run, but this time with the intention of saving the very people who wanted her captured or dead. Creon, seated behind her, clutched the data wafer like a lifeline. Castor kept his attention on the terrain, skillfully guiding the vehicle around boulders and dunes. After about an hour of dusty travel, they stopped behind a rock outcropping to regroup. Morin's voice crackled over comms. We're about 30 kilometers from city perimeter sensors. The good news is the desert storms might shield us from immediate detection. Sana drew a shaky breath. Then it's on to phase 2. We find a covert path into the city, break into the data distribution center, and broadcast the real history, along with the variant infiltration proof. Hey, readers, thanks for sticking around. If you're on board with this stealth mission, comment stealth. Or if you think they should just announce themselves and negotiate, comment parley. And out of curiosity, is anyone else from a desert region reading this? Night fell by the time they reached the capital's outer limits. The desert wind died, giving way to a haunting stillness broken only by the distant hum of city machinery. The perimeter sensors, tall spires topped with blinking lights, could pick up unauthorized movement. They had to bypass them, so they parked the vehicles in a hidden gully. Creeping along drainage canals and service roads, they noticed the city was under partial lockdown. At intervals, security drones hovered overhead, scanning for suspicious activity. The group advanced methodically, using handheld jammers from Morin's kit to scramble the drone's immediate signals. Occasionally, they passed deserted residential blocks, windows dark or boarded up. The few citizens out on the streets scurried away, avoiding any confrontation. Though official messages likely portrayed them as enemies, many people were simply too scared or too exhausted by the martial law to question anything. Their target was the citywide communications hub, a squat fortress-like structure at the center of the capital. It served as the main node for planet-wide broadcasts, official announcements, and data streaming. If they could upload their files there, the truth would flood every corner of Terrassa Prime. They took shelter behind a row of idling transport vehicles, scanning the massive building. The perimeter bristled with armed guards and security turrets. Another challenge, the hub's main entrance required high-level authorization. Hale studied a guard checkpoint through binoculars. We might need to create a distraction, or else we'll never get through that front line. Sana and Creon exchanged glances, hearts pounding. This was it, the final push. Success could mean freeing Terrassa from centuries of lies. Failure would mean lifetime imprisonment or death. Castor inhaled sharply, eyeing the building. I'll draw the guards away. I can move faster and cause enough confusion to let you slip in. Sana's pulse spiked at the thought. That's too dangerous. He gave a crooked smile. I'm human, remember? Supposedly unstoppable. Let's use that myth for our advantage. And so the plan took shape. Morin and Hale circled around to set timed explosives on a cluster of unoccupied security vehicles across the plaza. The resulting blast, non-lethal but attention-grabbing, would lure the guards to investigate. At the same time, Castor would appear on the opposite flank, letting himself be spotted just enough to send them into a frenzy of human-sighted chaos. Once the guards left their posts, Sana, Creon, and Lance would slip into the hub through a side door using the stolen ID credentials Morin had hacked. The explosions went off in thunderous pops. Flashes lit the dark sky, and sirens wailed. Guards ran, barking orders. Chaos reigned as officers scrambled to secure the perimeter, unsure if the blasts were sabotage or something far worse. Then Castor made his move. He sprinted across an illuminated walkway, letting the overhead cameras catch him in full view. Shouts erupted. There, it's him, the human! Energy blasts whipped through the air, but Castor dodged behind statues and pillars, drawing the guards deeper into the labyrinth of courtyard structures. Heart in her throat, Sana gestured to Creon and Lance. They darted toward the side entrance, hugging the walls. The stolen ID card beeped successfully against the scanner, and they slipped inside. A corridor of harsh fluorescent lights stretched before them, dotted with security cameras. Lance deployed a small device that looped the camera feed, granting them precious seconds to move undetected. They reached the broadcasting chamber, an expansive hall lined with towering servers and data nodes. On a central dais sat the main console, from which official broadcasts were typically delivered. Now it would serve as their platform to upload the revelations about the variant and the artificially created myth of monstrous humans. Creon took the data wafer from his satchel, trembling with excitement and fear. Sana stood guard, scanning for any incoming footsteps. Outside, the explosions had died down, replaced by frantic orders over the public address system. Somewhere out there, Castor was risking his life. With a deep breath, Creon activated the console. Lance inserted the data drives, initiating the upload protocol. Lines of code filled the screen as the system processed the files. Documentary proof of centuries-long manipulations, ancient text that contradicted the official story, and even holographic evidence of the real alliances humans once had with Tirasans. Time crawled in that echoing hall. A bead of sweat trickled down Sana's temple. She could almost sense the city's heartbeat beyond these walls. Fear, confusion, the drumming tension of wariness. "Come on," she whispered, eyes flicking to the status bar that slowly ticked upward. Then came the dreaded sound of footsteps in the corridor. A cluster of voices approached, boots echoing on tile. "We have intruders! Check the broadcast room!" Sana's pulse hammered. Lance dropped beneath a console, weapon at the ready. Creon remained at the station, refusing to abandon the final step of the upload. "Keep them off me," he hissed. As the door slid open, a squad of city guards spilled into the chamber. Their expressions ranged from determination to outright fear upon seeing actual infiltration in progress. Energy weapons were raised. Sana pivoted from behind a server bank, disabling the lead guard's sidearm with a precise shot from her own borrowed pistol. Lance leapt out, covering her. More blasts crackled. The second guard took cover, firing blindly, forcing Sana to duck. Adrenaline pounded in her veins. One guard shouted, "The traitors! Stop the upload!" Shots seared the air, dangerously close to Creon's position. He crouched low, continuing to feed the data into the console. The progress bar hit 97%, 98%. "This is madness," yelled another guard, pinned by Lance's barrage. "You're aligning with a human? They'll kill us all." "They're not the killers," Sana growled, remembering Castor's gentle eyes, remembering how he risked everything to help them share this truth. "We've been lied to." Finally, with an excruciating pause, the console beeped. Upload complete. All across Terrassa Prime, screens, public terminals, and personal devices flickered. In living rooms, marketplaces, offices, an emergency broadcast began. Images of variant infiltration, centuries of doctored records, and testimonies from other worlds filled the airwaves. They had done it. The truth was free. And there you have it, the gripping conclusion to "He said one word," and the alien girl screamed "human" before bolting away. What a ride! Did the ending surprise you? Do you think Sana and Castor succeeded in opening their planet's eyes? Or will the struggle continue? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And please remember to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue sharing these incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars through our tales.